For years, the one thing Harry and Meghan always had was each other. Every trip, every statement, every camera, together. It became their whole identity as a couple, the united front, the us against the world image they built so carefully, so deliberately, that even their critics had to admit, whatever else you think about them, they move as one. So when the news broke that Harry is heading to the UK in July, and Meghan's name was conspicuously absent from the headline, people noticed. Not because it's a scandal, not because there's a fight, but because something that never happened before is suddenly happening now. And when something that never happened before happens, that's worth paying attention to. Stay with me, because this video isn't about rumors, it's not about who's winning or losing, it's about one specific moment in this marriage that I think a lot of people are getting wrong. Let's start with what we actually know. No speculation, no filling in blanks, just the facts as they've been reported. Harry is traveling to the UK in July 2026. The trip is tied to the one-year countdown to the Invictus Games, which are being held in Birmingham in 2027. That part is official. That part is on the calendar. According to BBC, ITV News, and The Telegraph, Harry is expected to bring Archie and Lilibet with him, 7 and 5 years old, both born after Megxit. This would be their first time back in the UK in 4 years. And Meghan? Reports say she is expected to join as well, but her participation, as multiple outlets phrased it, remains uncertain. King Charles has reportedly offered the family a royal residence to stay in during the visit, which sources are calling an olive branch, a gesture of goodwill from a father who is still fighting cancer and who, by all accounts, wants to see his grandchildren. Now here's where it gets interesting, because what's been reported as a simple family trip is actually several things happening at once. There's the public reason, Invictus, Birmingham, 2027. There's the private reason, a grandfather, 2 grandchildren, and time that no one can guarantee will keep coming. And then there's the thing nobody's really talking about. The fact that for the first time in a long time, Harry's personal urgency and Meghan's public strategy appear to be pulling in slightly different directions. That's not a tabloid story. That's just what happens in a real marriage when 2 real people are navigating completely different pressures at exactly the same time. And if you've ever been in that situation, even just a version of it, you'll know exactly what I mean. If you find this kind of analysis useful, go ahead and subscribe, because this is what we do here. Not noise, not drama, just honest conversations about what's actually going on. Now let me show you what I mean by that shift, because the next part is where it gets genuinely fascinating. Think back to 2020. Think back to every trip Harry has made to the UK since they left. The funeral of Prince Philip, Harry went. Meghan stayed in California, pregnant and with a doctor's note. Fine. Understandable. Nobody questioned that. The Platinum Jubilee, they came together, left together, kept a low profile, united front, controlled image. The death of Queen Elizabeth II, Harry flew over, Meghan came too. They were photographed together at every possible moment, because that's how they operate. That's the system. And in between all of those, every time Harry came back alone, it was framed as temporary. A legal battle, a specific obligation. Never a choice where he said, I'm going, and I'm taking the kids and the plan is still forming on Meghan's end. That's new. And I want to be precise about what I'm saying here, because this is the part where other channels will start screaming, the marriage is over, and Meghan is controlling him. And honestly, I think that's lazy. What I'm actually saying is simpler and more interesting than that. For the first time, Harry appears to have made a decision based entirely on what he needs as a son and as a father. And that decision did not automatically come packaged with a joint statement, a matching schedule, and a coordinated rollout. He is going because his father is sick. His father has been dealing with cancer since early 2024. Harry flew over within days of that diagnosis. He has seen Charles a handful of times since. But his children haven't been to the UK in 4 years, and Charles, who by all accounts adores those kids, has not seen them in person for a significant stretch of time. That's the real engine driving this trip. Not Invictus, not PR, not a Netflix camera. A father who wants his children to know their grandfather before time makes that impossible. That kind of decision doesn't need a strategy meeting. It doesn't need a brand alignment call. It just needs someone who loves his dad enough to get on a plane. And I think that's actually the most human Harry has looked in a very long time. But here's what makes it complicated. And this is the part I really want you to think about, because it says something profound about where this marriage is right now. Here's a question I want you to sit with for a second. What does it feel like when you and your partner want fundamentally different things at the same time, and both of you are completely, entirely, 100% right? Not one person being selfish and the other being reasonable. Not one person being controlling and the other being a victim. Just two people, in one life, pulled by two different compasses that are both pointing somewhere real. That's what I see when I look at this situation. Harry's compass right now is pointing toward family, toward his father's health, toward his children knowing where they came from, toward something that doesn't have a brand strategy attached to it, something raw and biological and urgent. Meghan's compass is pointing somewhere different. And I want to say this carefully because I'm not criticizing her for it. The United Kingdom is not a neutral place for Meghan Markle. It never has been, but it's especially not now. Every time she sets foot on British soil, the tabloid machine reactivates like it never stopped. Every expression she makes, every outfit she wears, every word she says or doesn't say, it gets picked apart, reframed, and packaged in the least flattering version possible. That's not paranoia. That's documented. That's a pattern. And when you've spent years building something new, a brand, a lifestyle platform, a version of yourself that exists outside of that machine, the last thing you want is a trip that hands them fresh ammunition without giving you any control over the narrative. So from Meghan's perspective, going to the UK on someone else's timeline, for someone else's event, on terms she didn't negotiate, that's a real risk. That's not irrational. But from Harry's perspective, waiting for perfect conditions to take his kids to see their dying grandfather, that's not really an option either. And so you get this moment. Two people in the same marriage, both making sense, both pointing different directions. There's a word for that, and it's not divorce. It's not crisis. It's not betrayal. The word is drift. Not the dramatic kind, not the kind that ends in lawyers and headlines. The quiet kind. The kind that happens in every long-term relationship when two people grow into themselves and discover, slowly and without malice, that their individual centers of gravity have shifted just slightly apart. It doesn't mean they don't love each other. It doesn't mean the marriage is broken. It means they are two actual people now, not just a unit, not just a headline, not just a brand, but two real human beings with different needs navigating a genuinely difficult situation. And honestly, that's the most relatable thing the Sussexes have ever done. Because if you've been in a long relationship, you know exactly what this looks like from the inside. You know the conversation that doesn't happen, the one where nobody says the hard thing out loud because life is busy and the kids need to get to school and there will be time to figure it out later. Leave a comment if you've ever been in that space, where you and your partner were both right and both completely stuck at the same time. Because I have a feeling this comment section is going to get very real very quickly. Now, what does this moment actually mean for where Harry and Meghan are headed? Because that's the part I think matters most, and that's exactly where we're going next. Let me tell you what I think this trip is not. It's not the beginning of a reconciliation with the royal family. It's not a PR reset. It's not Harry testing the waters for some kind of return to royal duties. And it's absolutely not, whatever the Daily Mail will tell you, proof that the marriage is collapsing. What it is, I think, is something much quieter and much more significant. It's the first time Harry has operated from his own center of gravity rather than from the couple's shared one. And that is actually a healthy thing. In theory. In a normal relationship between two private people, this would barely register. Of course you make decisions based on your own values, your own urgency, your own love. That's what adults do. That's what parents do. The problem, and this is the central tension of the Sussex story in 2026, is that Harry and Meghan don't get to be private people. Every individual decision they make gets read as a joint statement. Every absence gets read as a rift. Every separate schedule gets read as evidence of something falling apart. So when Harry decides to take his kids to see their grandfather, what the internet hears is, Meghan refused to go. And when Meghan's schedule is described as uncertain, what the tabloids print is, trouble in paradise. Neither of those framings is accurate, but both of them will dominate the coverage. And here's the painful irony at the heart of all of this. The very thing Harry and Meghan left the royal family to escape, which was the loss of control over their own narrative, is the one thing they have never fully managed to reclaim. 6 years out of the institution, a Netflix deal, a podcast, memoirs, and still, the moment Harry books a flight to London, the story belongs to everyone else before it belongs to him. That's not a marriage problem. That's a structural problem, the kind that doesn't get solved by a better publicist or a more carefully worded statement. And I think Harry knows that. I think the fact that he's going anyway, quietly, without a joint rollout, without a coordinated media strategy, suggests that at some point he stopped trying to win the narrative war and started just trying to live his life. Which, when you say it out loud, sounds like exactly what he always said he wanted. So where does that leave them, as a couple, as a family, and as the most scrutinized pair on the planet? Here's what I think is going to happen. Harry will land in the UK in July. He will take Archie and Lilibet to see their grandfather. There will be photographs, maybe official ones, maybe not. Charles will hold those kids, and whatever complicated, painful, unresolved thing exists between him and his son will be temporarily suspended, because grandchildren have that power. Meghan may join them, or she may arrive separately, later, on her own schedule and her own terms. And if she does, it will be on a timeline that gives her some measure of control over how she's seen, which is smart, not cold. It's the decision of a woman who has been burned by this particular fire enough times to know that you don't walk into it without knowing where the exits are. And then they will all go back to California, back to Montecito, back to the life they chose, and the world will spend a week arguing about what it meant, and whether Harry looked happy, and whether Meghan seemed distant, and whether the kids looked comfortable, and whether Charles seemed weak, and whether this is the beginning of something or the end. And Harry and Meghan will put the kids to bed, and life will continue. Because that's the thing about these quiet moments of drift inside a long marriage. They don't resolve cleanly. They don't come with a dramatic scene and a clear turning point. They just accumulate, slowly, almost invisibly, until one day you look up and realize that you and the person you love most have been standing on slightly different ground for longer than you noticed. Sometimes that's the beginning of a real conversation. Sometimes it's just the reality of two people growing up inside the same life at different speeds. I don't know which one this is for Harry and Meghan. Nobody outside that house does. But I do know this. The fact that Harry is getting on that plane tells you something real about who he is underneath all of this. Underneath the Duke of Sussex, underneath the memoir, underneath the Netflix deal and the legal battles and the years of carefully managed statements, there is a man who wants to sit with his sick father, who wants his children to know where they come from, who, when it matters, chooses the thing that is real over the thing that is strategic. And whatever you think about the rest of it, I think that part is worth something. If this video gave you something to think about, share it with someone who's been following the story, because the more thoughtful voices we get in this conversation, the better the conversation gets. I'll see you in the next one.